Alright guys, so you're looking to install your speed bar. So I'm going to go through a step-by-step instructions. This should only take about 10 minutes. This is definitely one of the easiest add-ons to put on. Actually, all of our products are pretty easy to assemble. So we're going to get right into it and show you the first step in adding your speed bar. Alright, so first step that we're going to want to do is figure out where in your rack you're going to want to actually place the speed bar. So depending on first of all, which rack you have or what add-on features that you're going to put on is going to help you determine where you're going to place it. And it's very simple to move around, so it's not a big deal if you don't get it right the first time. So for me, if I wanted to, which I plan on, I'm going to add in the double pulley system. I have the Mega Rack, so it has the nice long rail here to add those features. I plan on putting a pulley system on the back portion of it, and then my speed bar is going to go on the front portion of it. So I know where I'm going to set mine up. That's up to you guys to determine where it is that you want yours. So if you're doing a deadlift or you want to do deadlifts, you're going to want to have some headroom. So that's kind of one of the main things, is maybe set your bar, or imagine where your bar is going to be, and actually go through a deadlift to make sure that you have enough room for your head to obviously not smack the wall. So that can help you kind of determine the placement of the speed bar. Like I said, it's easy to adjust, so no big deal. So we're going to start out with the basic parts. We have a 3-hole plate. You have to excuse my hardware. I've taken this thing apart probably 10-15 times, so my hardware is a little beat up. Yours will be brand spanking new. So the 1/2-inch nut, if you assembled your rack, you will definitely know what these are all about. So what we're going to do is simply place the 1/2-inch nut in here, in the rail, and turn. Okay. So the next step is to take the bolt and place the bolt on here and just spin it tight with your hand. And there we already have the first step done. We're not going to attach it down yet, not real tight. That way we can move it depending on where we decide to put it. Alright, so now we're going to actually assemble the fittings that come with it. They actually have the UHMW wear strips on them. We're going to fit them for the top of the rack, for the top portion and the bottom portion, and I'll explain why that matters. So the fittings going to go on the rail like so, and this is very typical of, if you built a rack, you'll definitely understand how these work. So the 1/2-inch nut is actually already in here. Put the fitting on it, made in USA down, and we're just going to hand tighten this bolt. So what we're going to want to look at is, this is going to be for the top. This is going to go up and down. This will be the top side. So with the top side, we can get it nice and flush. It doesn't really matter. We want it flush. But on the other end, I already assembled it. What we want is an actual little step. We want on the bottom side, we want the fitting to actually go past the end a little bit. And that's because when this rotates on that plate, you do not want this bar to be, there is no plastic cap on this end, so this is how you know that this is the bottom side. We don't want this part of the rail to actually be scraping the fitting that you have there. So we're going to move this up, so this part is a little bit higher or lower, depending how you look at it, is a little bit higher than this rail, so it can't scrape the powder coating off of there. So we get both pieces assembled. The top with the plastic cap is the top, it's flush. Bottom fitting is a little bit higher, the end of this rail. So if you happen to be watching this video before you actually purchase the unit, one of the things that you'll need to know and will need to know is what is your rack made from? So do you have the top rail that is the 3-hole rail? And that's why that we sell them separately, or you can upgrade, or if you don't plan on adding any features, then you can have the lower cost rail with no holes in it. So if you have the rails with no holes, setup's going to be slightly different than if you have the rail with the 3 holes in the open side. So this makes it super simple if you have the rail that has the holes in it, because we're just going to simply feed this through one of the tops. Now we're going to set that down. We're going to grab one of the rails. Actually, it's the same rail that would be here, but we're going to grab this rail. We're going to lift this rod up nice and high and simply feed it through. Feed it through here. You're going to be through both holes, both ends. And then put it back through the last hole in the plate. So you put the bolt in the first hole, and the rod actually goes in the farthest hole from the bolt, and now this has the ability to spin around. Okay, so I want to actually go over something that some of you guys might run into is, what if your ceiling height is so low that you can't feed it this way? You can't raise this up through the top hole. Well, that's not a problem. Lots of different ways to achieve this. So what we're going to do is actually lower this piece down on an angle, feed it through ahead of time, and you can do this way regardless of your ceiling height. So I fed it through top and bottom, and now we're just going to pick what hole matches up to where we want it on our rack, and then we're actually going to slide it up through there like so and set it in there. Okay, so next up, what we're going to need is the shaft collars with the set screw. So we're going to want to make sure that this set screw is facing out, right by this rod, but facing out. If it moves, no big deal, but you'll place it in here. I actually just set it down inside the rail, lift up the rod, and then feed it in there, and you're actually going to want the shaft collar, the rod, to fit right inside the shaft collar. You'll need your 1/8 inch Allen wrench. So hopefully you guys can see this okay. Sometimes it's hard to see down here, but all you're gonna do is reach down with one finger. I know you can't see it, but reach down with one finger, grab the bottom of the shaft collar, and actually lift up. You're gonna lift it right up against the bottom of the plate, and you'll have to find the hole, the set screw, pull it up tight to the bottom of the plate, and then just look down there, find the set screw, and you're just gonna tighten that set screw righty-tighty until it locks down tight and get it nice and tight. Then that bottom is secured and this rod can't lift up. And then you're going to do the same thing on top depending on what rail you have. We'll demonstrate that next. Alright, so here we go. The next shaft collar is going to go right up top, and that's why I love the 3-hole. And you can put the shaft collar around the rod up top. You're going to slightly pull up to take any tension or any gap that there was on the bottom between the fitting and the shaft collar. You're going to pull it up, and simply, I like to pull down at the same time, so lift up on the rod, put the Allen wrench inside the set screw, and kind of pull down and twist at the same time. Then this rod will be really sturdy and stable, and that's literally all you have to do. this side is done, you'll move on to the other side, make sure that it's in the same hole as you discovered based on where you're going to want to put your speed bar within your rack. Just make sure both sides are even. Repeat the process. So if you're someone that purchased squat rack with the railing that has no holes in it, like I said, it's going to be slightly different as far as installation. So that 3-hole fitting, which you may have already installed up here just above the fitting that's down there, bolt is through the end hole, through the nut, and it's up here. If otherwise, you can do it where you just slide the fitting on. But what we need to do first is take our additional shaft collar, slide it on before the fitting, or the fitting's already up here, no big deal either way. And then place the fitting on as well. So I can't demonstrate completely because this rod is the rod that protrudes through for the 3-hole, so it's a little bit long. But I'm just going to demonstrate, just giving it a little bit of lean, because it's the same thing really. So with the fitting already being up here, then you would just slide the rod up through this hole on an angle, get it in there. It should already be in the bottom. The bottom can slide as well, as long as you didn't tighten that up. If you did tighten it up and it won't slide, just loosen that bottom shaft collar and let it slide back and forth. So now that you have the rod in here, into that last hole, the farthest away from the bolt, you're just going to bring the shaft collar up, get it real tight, pushing up, and then tighten it down. So now this rod can't move up or down because it's fastened underneath the bottom fitting and then fastened up top, butting up against this fitting. Now that rod is super stable, it can't move, and you're going to have a nice smooth system. So at this point, you're going to want to just go to the other side and make sure if you have the 3-hole that you're putting the rod in the same hole up top. And then the bottom's easy to adjust. You'll take a measurement from either the wall or this end of the rack to the center of the rod, and then move the bottom to that same measurement so it's straight up and down. It's nice and plumb. So now that I took my measurement up top to see the distance I'm going from the actual upright, 19 3/4 where I have mine, measure the bottom right to the center of the rod, 19 3/4. Now I'm going to actually fasten this down. Again, we had the bottom just slightly lower than the rail itself, so now this can spin freely without rubbing against this plate. And if for some reason you mess that up, very simple. You can just take this fitting, loosen the bolt, and then move that fitting up or down. I'm assuming it would be, you have to move it down to get it, to raise this bar up, and then you're going to want to get it real tight. So take this bolt and get it real tight again, and then set it down and just check to see if there's any rubbing against that bottom fitting. Should go nice and smooth, and just make adjustments accordingly. So now that we have everything installed and locked down, bolts, shaft collars, everything tight, now we're going to install the weight plate holders, or in some cases handles. So you can actually purchase additional ones of these handles with the knobs and use them for weight plate holders or handles when you're doing things like shoulder press, cleans, lots of different things. So, but the way that these function is just simply taking the knob, determining where, depending on what lift you're doing, these are meant to go into any of these holes, and just quickly, they have threads, turning it on there. So again, depending on what lift you're doing, a lot of times they're actually going to be installed the other way, to where the weight, let's say we're going to do a deadlift, the weight plate holder is actually going to be installed on here, get it nice and tight. And then we would take the additional one. We also have the full length bar, and you would just pick, depending on what lift you're doing, what the right height is. Installing, put the knob through, and then just threading. The bar also has threads on both ends. And this is the same bar as the pull-up bar, so if you have the speed bar, you now have a pull-up bar too. So this, you can see it swivels. You'll just take the knob on the other side, put it in the same hole, and fasten. Put the other weight plate holder on, and then at this point you should kind of gather how it works. Depending on the exercise, you're just going to quickly move things around so that it functions properly. The weight plate holder is either on the outside or inside, or the handle. There's just a million different exercises, so how you can actually achieve the different lifts is just a matter of moving things around. So at this point, everything should be all done, and now you just get to enjoy your new speed bar. So I just quickly wanted to go over a few things that might possibly happen. So depending on how level that you got your fittings, there can be some rubbing of this UHMW. So you want to make sure that your fitting is nice and level with everything so that the rod goes straight up and down. If it's off kilter, if it's swiveled a bit, then obviously this fitting can rub on this rod. And then the other thing is sometimes this UHMW could be tight on the rod, either top or bottom, and it's just going to take a little time for that UHMW to wear down to where it has that freedom to move about. So I just wanted to go over a couple things that might possibly happen, just so you'll be prepared for it. Sometimes just a matter of adjusting your fittings. These fittings actually can move up and down anywhere throughout this. So sometimes it's just moving things around just slightly until you get it just right, and then it should travel real freely with no noise as well. So just a heads up on a few of those things.